Hello, this is Amy, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the Sunday, July 12th issue of the Democrat and Chronicle on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Cover story: Brunch Appeal. Amid a changing scene, these eateries offer Rochester's best late morning fare. Rise and dine. These popular brunch spots in Rochester are definitely worth the hype. Tracy Shoemaker, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Rochester's brunch scene has changed quite a bit over the past several years. Many places that used to serve brunch are no longer doing so, and places you might have gone for over-the-top Sunday brunch buffets in the past are now serving them only on special holidays. Brunch in general has become a more casual outing. And with alcohol consumption on the decline, some brunch spots focus on specialty coffee drinks instead of mimosas and bloodies, although there are plenty of those to be found. Here are some of the nicer places to go for brunch in the Rochester area. While these distinctions can be fuzzy, I've focused primarily on full-service restaurants rather than coffee shops and diners, which no doubt will have their own stories in the future. Atlas Eats. Atlas Eats Kitchen and Bake Shop, owned by Diane and Jerry Brinkman, is a cozy, charming restaurant tucked in a residential neighborhood in Irondequoit. By night, it highlights a different cuisine from around the world every 2 weeks. On Fridays and Saturdays, it serves an internationally inspired brunch menu that remains fairly consistent over time. Its most buzzed-about staple is its savory whole wheat pancakes laced with kimchi. They are drizzled with spicy dragon sauce and topped with a poached egg. Wash brunch down with coffee, cold brew, or a mimosa. You'll most likely head home with a loaf of bread or a bag of goodies from its in-house bakery. Reservations are not accepted for brunch. 2185 North Clinton Ave, Irondequoit, 544-1300, atlaseats.com. Mendon Brunch on the Brook. Mendon Brunch on the Brook, a breakfast and brunch spot in Mendon, distinguishes itself by making most everything from scratch. They bake homemade bagels and breads, cure their own bacon, smoke their own meats, make their own cream cheeses, and even roast their own coffees. Its best seller is French toast made with thick slices of homemade cinnamon swirl bread, topped with bruleed sugar and adorned with fresh berries, candied orange, vanilla crema, and Grand Marnier maple syrup. But you can also stop in for a classic breakfast sandwich. It serves a specialty coffee beverage, but does not offer alcohol. It does not accept reservations. 6 Victor Mendon Road in Mendon, 497-7005, mendononthebrook.com. Tavos Antojitos y Tequila. Tavos Antojitos y Tequila is the North Winton Village. In the North Winton Village, serves a small but tasty Mexican brunch menu Tuesday through Sunday. Choose from chilaquiles, huevos rancheros, or chorizo and egg mini burritos, as well as Mexican-inspired twists on brunch cocktails. Its full menu is available as well. Owner Gabe Guevara serves authentic Mexican fare, much of it drawing from his family's former restaurant, El Rincon Mexicana in Sodus, Wayne County. Come summer, you'll find a large patio for outdoor dining. 425 Merchants Road, Rochester, 585-312-6683, tavosrochester.com. Public Provisions. Public Provisions in the Rochester Public Market serves as a quick service spot for breakfast sandwiches, casual lunches, and coffee beverages during market hours. During Sunday brunch, it is a full-service restaurant and craft cocktail bar. Brunch brings classic items such as quiche, French toast, eggs Benedict, and cocktails. Come summer, you'll find outdoor seating on a colorfully striped area in front. Public Provisions serves brunch from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Sundays, but opens at 9 a.m. during Flower City Days at the market, May 10th, 17th, 24, 25, and 31. Reservations are accepted. 45 Public Market, Rochester, 585-504-4617, publicprovisions.com. Brown Hound Downtown. The Brown Hound Downtown is housed within the Memorial Art Gallery in Rochester's Neighborhood of the Arts, and some tables overlook the sculptures in the Vanden Breuil Pavilion. Large, colorful portraits of dogs line the walls. Brunch served Saturdays and Sundays includes classic breakfast fare, chicken and waffles, biscuits and gravy, avocado toast, and more. 500 University Ave, Rochester, 585-506-9725, brownhounddowntown.com. The Coterie Restaurant. The Coterie Restaurant opened in Gates in 2025. The American restaurant has a casual, eclectic vibe and is decorated with antiques and mismatched furniture. The fun brunch menu includes creative fare like chicken and waffle skewers, a biscuit and gravy burrito, and crispy cheddar tacos. Cocktails include a cereal milk martini and a boozy bourbon caramel milkshake. 777 Spencerport Road, Gates, 585-363-5000. thecoterierestaurant.com. The Hideaway. The restaurant at 197 Park Ave has been a fixture in the Park Avenue neighborhood since it was known as Hogan's Hideaway. Now called The Hideaway, it has been given a facelift that's maintained its vintage charm with rustic brick walls and century-old hardwood floors. The brunch menu offers spins on classic American dishes. The crispy Brussels sprouts appetizer with dried cranberries, bacon bits, and a maple sherry drizzle is a customer favorite at any time of day. Reservations are accepted. 197 Park Ave, Rochester, 585-434-0511, thehideawayrock.com. The Gatehouse. The Gatehouse, a longtime restaurant in the Village Gate in the neighborhood of the Arts, always seems to be hopping. The brunch menu includes a lobster Florentine Benedict, a brunch pizza, stuffed French toast, a new Dubai chocolate skillet pancake, and lots more. The casual restaurant is walking distance from plays at the nearby West Her Auditorium Theater. Reservations are accepted. 274 North Goodman Street, Rochester, 585-473-2090, The Gatehouse Cafe. Crisp Rochester. Crisp Rochester, a trendy restaurant in the South Wedge, is known for its cocktails and casual menu that focuses on comfort food with nods to the South. It serves brunch Sundays and Mondays, yes, Mondays. It has a good selection of gluten-free and vegan options, a must-order if you are a meat eater, the sweet, smoky, and spicy candied billionaire bacon. If you're with a group, its carafe of mimosas allows you to mix your cocktail to your liking. Reservations are accepted. 819 South Clinton Ave, Rochester, 585-978-7237, crisprochester.com. Simply Crepes. Simply Crepes, which has 3 locations in the Rochester area, has a menu that leans brunchy all the time. The Hero family, who own and run the restaurant, has a French-Canadian background, and their crepes are a family recipe. The menu features sweet and savory crepes and shareable appetizers. Its rugby crepe, a nod to the McDonald's Big Mac, was featured on the cooking channel's The Best Thing I Ever Ate. Vegetarian and gluten-free items, including gluten and dairy-free buckwheat crepes, are available. It has a sizable menu of brunchy cocktails. Locations are 7 Showen Place, Pittsford, 1229 Bay Road, Penfield, and 101 South Main Street, Canandaigua. simplycrepes.com. The Mad Hatter. The Mad Hatter near the corner of Park Avenue and South Goodman Street greets you with a tantalizing display case of baked goods. It is cozy. In its cozy, charming dining room, it serves a sizable menu of brunch and lunch fare, as well as a separate gluten-free menu. If you love flights that lets you taste a variety of dishes, the Mad Hatter has several. A roasted potato topper flight, a soup flight, pancake flight, toast flight, and a Benedict flight. It serves high tea Tuesday through Friday and one Saturday of the month. It does not accept reservations except for high tea. 176 South Goodman Street, Rochester, 585-545-4985. Mad Hatter Restaurant and Bakery.com. Locals only. Brunch is served every day at Locals Only in the Hiram Sibley Building on Alexander Street near East Avenue. The modern space has a bright, minimal interior design. Its loft that looks out through the curved windows of the 99-year-old building is especially inviting. The menu focuses on sandwiches, including creative breakfast sandwiches and lunch creations. Mimosas are made in several fruity flavors, and it has a large selection of non-alcoholic beverages. Expect a rather loud, upbeat musical backdrop. 311 Alexander Street, Rochester, 585-367-4569. Locals only 311.com. Radio Social. Radio Social, housed in Rochester's historic Stromberg Carlson warehouse, encompasses 2 bars, a Middle Eastern restaurant, a pizza/burger counter, and a 34-lane bowling alley. The brunch menu changes frequently, but always features Middle Eastern flavors. Be sure to get a side of the crispy potatoes, which comes with black garlic mayo and tomato amba. It also features Detroit pizzas, including breakfast pizza, from its pizza counter. It was named to the USA Today Bars of the Year list in 2024. It does not serve brunch from July through September. 20 Carlson Road, Rochester, 585-244-1484. Radiosocial.com. Voula's. Voula's originated as a Greek bakery on Monroe Avenue. Now it's located a few miles away and is a combination bakery and restaurant that serves vegetarian and vegan Greek fare with an emphasis on brunch. The cheerful 1950 building is furnished with retro chrome kitchen and scattered with colorful knickknacks, antiques, and family treasures. Must-order items are its 3 Greek spreads, hummus, tzatziki, and keftir, served with cucumbers and soft pita bread. Take home a box of its Greek cookies, 850 Merchants Road, 585-242-0935, voulasrochester.com. The Owl House. Brunch has been a major attraction, the Owl House, for more than 16 years now. It's housed in a converted Victorian house in Wadsworth Square, just off Monroe Avenue, and has a pleasant patio in back. This restaurant always has had a mission of being a place where everyone can gather, regardless of diet, including vegan, gluten-free, and omnivore. Chicken or tofu and waffles are a perennial bestseller, and its craft cocktails are stellar. Brunch is served Saturdays and Sundays, and reservations are accepted. 40 Marshall Street, 585-360-2920. owlhouserochester.com. The Peppered Pig. The Peppered Pig is a cozy French and American restaurant tucked into a small strip mall in Penfield. A standout brunch item is its silky, authentic quiche Lorraine, but other possibilities include the croque madame, duck hash, and French toast made with Cointreau battered sourdough. It offers several takes on mimosas. Reservations are accepted. 1759 Empire Boulevard, Penfield, 585-347-6479. thepigrock.com. Tracy Shoemaker is food, drink, and dining reporter for the Democrat and Chronicle. About your DNC team. Please share your stories of September 11th as we mark its 25th anniversary. Michael Killian, Executive Editor, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Greater Rochester and America this month have marked our nation's 250th birthday, with parades and picnics and fireworks and community celebrations and tall ships and debate and discussion. Indeed, the official Monroe County celebration is at 5 p.m. today and this evening at ESL Ballpark in downtown Rochester. So perhaps hustle over there later with family and friends to enjoy the gathering. Just 2 months from now, we commemorate another important date in our history, one that goes back only 25 years instead of 250. This anniversary is as somber as one could imagine, yet quite worthy of reflection. That would be the coordinated terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, which cost close to 3,000 lives at the World Trade Center in New York City, at the Pentagon, and on United Airlines Flight 93, which crashed in west central Pennsylvania after passengers fought to regain control of the jet's cockpit from Al-Qaeda terrorists. The surprise and sophisticated attack stunned Americans, boosting fear and anxiety and sadness and anger in a manner nothing really had in our nation since the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor 60 years earlier. The new date of infamy, simply 9/11, in everyone's shorthand, was truly horrific. Beyond everyone's emotions, there were and still are all sorts of ripple effects. The courage of first responders and the health ills so many have faced since. Overseas wars and conflict whose outcomes have hardly been satisfying. Much higher levels of security and government surveillance, whether it be at airports or on city streets, and ongoing and often troubling discussions and steps tied to America's place in the world, and tied to questions about the balance between our security and our freedoms. The Democrat and Chronicle, as part of the USA Today network, will look back in late summer to the world of the 9/11 attacks to report once again on the people we lost and on how the attacks affected our lives. This won't be simply an exercise in reciting history, however. Our reporters and photographers and videographers will do their level best to revisit people and events in the context of ongoing impacts and then and now. Storytelling. Look for a special print section likely on Sunday, September 13th, exploring these topics 25 years on. And today, here in mid-July, I ask each of you to share with the DNC your memories of September 11th and your thoughts on how those terrible events affected your family and friends and you. Perhaps you knew someone who perished. Maybe the attacks upended your work life. Perhaps you or a relative or friend went off to fight in Afghanistan or later in Iraq. And you might just have observations on how 9/11 changed America, in constructive ways and perhaps in concerning ways. Please share your memories and thoughts and story ideas by emailing me at the address below. We'll take your contributions and suggestions under consideration as our journalists gear up to cover this painful yet meaningful anniversary in just 2 months. Thank you for your readership. Mike Killian is Executive Editor. Reach him at mkillian@usatodayco.com. Rochester man gets max prison sentence in 2022 killing of local musician. Victoria E. Friel, New York Connect team. A Rochester man convicted of robbing and killing a local musician in 2022 has been sentenced to the maximum prison term. Musician killed during 2022 robbery. James Hallenbach, 29, was found dead on a sidewalk near Olean and Coretta Streets in Rochester at about 1:45 a.m. on August 21, 2022, according to the Rochester Police Department. Investigators determined Hallenbach had been shot and beaten during a robbery. Police say the shooter and another individual fled the scene in a vehicle. Rajul Keaton convicted of murder robbery. Rajul Keaton was convicted in May of second-degree murder, first-degree robbery, and second-degree robbery in connection with Hallenbach's death, according to the Monroe County District Attorney's Office. Prosecutors said Keaton, now 22, targeted Hallenbach as he was walking late at night, robbed him, and then shot and killed him. Keaton was arrested in November 2025, more than 3 years after the homicide. Judge imposes maximum sentence. State Supreme Court Justice Victoria Argento sentenced Keaton on Thursday, July 9th to 25 years to life in state prison, the district attorney's office said. James Hallenbach was simply taking a late-night walk when his life was stolen through a senseless act of violence, Assistant District Attorney Michael Carinanti, who prosecuted the case, said in a statement. The sentence imposed today ensures that Rahul Keaton will be held accountable for this horrific crime while providing a measure of justice for James's family and loved ones. Inspiration. Area students earn literary awards. Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. 5 Rochester area students won prizes in the 2026 Sokol High School Literary Awards Contest. Winnie Jang, a junior at East Ridge High School in Irondequoit, won the performance prize, $300 for Karma is Dead, and first place in prose, $300 for Seashells in the Trash. Lexi Chen, a senior at Pittsford Mendon High School, won first place in poetry, $300 for The Girl I Was. Haley Grove, a senior at School of the Arts, won second place in both poetry and prose, $200 each, for Hymn of Steel and Where the Lion Sleeps, respectively. She had won first place in prose in 2025 and third prize in prose in 2024. Bryn McHenry, a senior at the Harley School, won third place in prose, $100 for The Four Arms Dance. Haley Contino, a freshman at Churchville Chili High School, won third place in poetry, $100 for The Puppeteers Masquerade. In an email, Jang wrote that her performance piece is a direct response to global circumstances, criticizing the bystanders that not only aid culprits by keeping quiet, but ultimately harm themselves in the process too. Joshua Pettinger, the performance judge who owns and operates Wicked Squid Recording Studios, wrote, "Karma is Dead evokes feelings of hopelessness and despair through graphic and violent metaphors. What is truly profound about this piece, however, is how it wrestles with the idea of culpability." Jang's winning prose entry explores her Asian and American identities and how she made peace with herself, she wrote. How can a person define themselves without succumbing to other voices? You explore this question and more with beautiful language that feels poetic at times. Prose judge Takia C. Graham, a professor in the English/philosophy department at Monroe Community College, wrote to Jang. Where the Lion Sleeps, the second place winner, that is a short story set in the ancient hanging gardens of Babylon. Offers strong writing coupled with vivid and engaging description, Graham wrote to Grove, citing its lush imagery and historical flair. Graham wrote to McHenry about her third-place essay, The Four Arms Dance. One of the most compelling elements of your writing is how you make the reader pause and feel the physicality of music. Through your words, our bodies become both instrument and conductor. Chen's first-place poem stood out to me immediately for its clarity of voice and its striking imagery. Charles Coate, the poetry judge, wrote, he is a psychotherapist, a poetry instructor at Writers and Books, and the author of 2 books. Coate wrote that Grove's second-place poem, Hymn of Steel, distinguished itself through the power of its atmosphere and the intensity of its imaginative vision. The poem is rich with tactile and visceral detail. Contino's use of rhyme and meter is particularly effective. Cote wrote about the third place winner, the puppeteer's masquerade. I was also drawn to the poem's rich symbolic language. The Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library has sponsored a high school writing contest since 1958. In 1985, Eli and Mildred Sokol established an endowment so that the foundation could provide award money to the winners and honoraria to the judges. Eli Sokol has been a trustee of the Friends since 1983. Remarkable Rochesterians. Carolyn Merchant, born 1936. The author of the influential study, The Death of Nature, Women, Ecology, and the Scientific Revolution, 1980, as well as other books and numerous articles, Carolyn Merchant grew up in Rochester and was a finalist in 1954 in the Westinghouse National Science Talent Search during her senior year at Monroe High School. She received her undergraduate degree from Vassar College and master's and doctoral degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she was one of the first to be awarded the E.B. Fred Fellowship. She taught at the University of San Francisco before going in 1986 to the University of California, Berkeley, where she is a professor of environmental history, philosophy, and the history of science. She has been a Fulbright Senior Scholar, a Guggenheim Fellow, and the President of the American Society for Environmental History. She celebrates her 90th birthday Sunday, July 12th. Memories. A short history of Willow Point Park's many incarnations. Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. With summer in full swing, our thoughts turn to amusement parks, particularly one that delighted generations for decades in Webster. Willow Point Park off Bay Road overlooked Irondequoit Bay. Like contemporaries such as Olympic Park on Scottsville Road, Long Point Park in Geneseo, and Roseland Park in Canandaigua, Willow Point was smaller and more quaint than today's typical amusement parks. Willow Point had an early miniature golf course and attractions like archery and later trampolines. Children loved the kiddie rides, and companies held annual summer picnics there. Teens and young adults flocked to the roller rink / teen dance hall, where big-name garage bands of the 1960s performed. In the 1930s, Everett J. DeNeve opened the first incarnation of Willow Point Park. DeNeve and a business partner had been developing a nursery at the site, but the Great Depression killed those plans, and DeNeve came up with the amusement park idea. He built the miniature golf course in 1934 and continued building on each year. By 1939, DeNeve sold Willow Point to Jack Garliner. Garliner added new attractions throughout the 1940s and 1950s, including a carousel, more rides, batting cages, small boats, and more. A 1946 ad also mentioned tennis, volleyball, and badminton. A bingo hall was added in the 1950s, and the much-loved trampolines came in 1960. The in-ground trampolines were on the site of the discontinued archery range. In the 1950s, Garliner opened the park for free to blind children for one day each year and provided free lunches. In 1963, Democrat and Chronicle columnist Henry Clune wrote about the event, which was to be followed later that summer by similar days for children with multiple sclerosis and those with cerebral palsy. The park changed owners a few times, but Garliner continued to run Willow Point, later with help from his son-in-law, Morris Rock. Garliner offered to sell Willow Point Park to Webster in 1964, but town voters turned down the proposal. He died the following year. Joseph Schuyler, who owned Olympic Park in Chili, bought Willow Point in 1966. The park remained open for a few more years. rock and roll became more of an attraction with local bands like the Invictas and national acts like Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs and Big Wheelie and the Hubcaps playing at the roller rink. Willow Point closed after Labor Day in 1968. An auction stripped it of its gaudy embellishments, as a news account stated. The park sat vacant for years before a condominium complex was built on the site. But in the early 1970s, Frank Loggia made a short film about the park that can be found on YouTube. Loggia grew up near the park and graduated from Webster Thomas High School. He went on to a Hollywood career as a director and actor whose credits included the movies Fear No Evil and Lady in White. Alan Morrell is a Rochester-based freelance writer. A longer version of this story was originally published June 11, 2017 for the Whatever Happened To series. Community. Free jazz concerts return to Ontario Beach Park. Laura Nichols, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Local and national jazz bands are performing monthly in Charlotte as part of the Jazz at the Beach series. The free concerts are from 7 to 8:30 p.m. at Tropics Beach Club at 4775 Lake Ave, sponsored by the Ontario Beach Park Program Committee. The next concert will be July 14th, featuring Enclave. Paradigm Shift, founded by Melvin Henderson and Jerry Youngman in Rochester in the early 1990s, will perform August 11th. According to the group's website, Youngman toured with classic R&B icons such as the Drifters, the Platters, Martha Reeves, and St. Louis soul legend Walter Scott. Henderson has recorded and shared the stage with Al Jarreau, Roy Ayers, Cheryl Lynn, Harold Melvin, and the Blue Notes, and legendary organist Jack McDuff and Dr. Lonnie Smith. Drummer-composer Sean Jefferson has performed alongside prominent musicians such as Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra conductor Jeff Tyzik. On September 8th, the Darrell Parker Quartet will perform. Parker's website says the singer blends jazz standards, blues, storytelling, and modern flair inspired by legends such as Billie Holiday, Earth, Wind and Fire, Bob Marley, and Bill Evans. He also is a tenor saxophonist and a songwriter who studied mechanical engineering at Rochester Institute of Technology. The series will conclude with an October 13th concert by Sofrito Latin Jazz Quintet, which performs Latin jazz fusion, Afro-Cuban, and Brazilian music. For more information on Ontario Beach Program Committee events, go to ontariobeachcenterentertainment.org. Bookstore chain opening a new store in Henrietta. Marcia Greenwood, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. Barnes & Noble plans to open a store this year in Henrietta. An opening soon sign has been posted in the window of the former Party City space in Market Square Plaza, 620 Jefferson Road. The store will open in November 2026, according to the Barnes & Noble website. The chain, which is in the throes of a major brick-and-mortar revival, has around 700 locations nationwide. 5 of them are in the Rochester market, at Pittsford Plaza, the town center at Webster, the mall at Grease Ridge, Collegetown, and Eastview Mall. Party City closed all of its stores in early 2025 after filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in late 2024. It now has a presence in some Staples stores. In 2022, Barnes & Noble closed its store at the Park Point complex at Rochester Institute of Technology in Henrietta. The location also served at the school's bookstore. Instead, RIT partnered with a virtual bookstore company, saying students preferred having low-cost school materials delivered to them. Beyond that, ambitions for the RIT Barnes & Noble to become a community destination never materialized. Arts. Behind the curtain. Folk Art Guild opens its studios and keeps craft traditions alive. Laura Nichols, Rochester Democrat and Chronicles. Get a behind-the-scenes look at the Folk Art Guild's studios on July 18th to 19th. The Guild is participating in the first National Craft Open Studios Weekend, presented by the American Craft Council. It's also planning a series of hands-on workshops August 6th to 9th. From 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., July 18th and 19th, the Guild will open its pottery, woodworking, and weaving and sewing shops. Attendees can meet artists and learn about traditional craft techniques. Admission is free. East Hill Gallery will also be open, featuring the Guild artists' pottery, woodwork, textiles, natural fiber clothing, and other handmade crafts. Participants in Craft Weekend will receive 18 hours of instruction in a craft they choose, including drawing, writing, seed sewing, photography, and theater. Other classes are sold out, but allowing people to join a wait list. The cost is $525 for adults and $375 for youth. All participants will receive lunch. Those who stay overnight also receive breakfast and dinner made from local ingredients. People may stay in a shared guest rooms at the Romeo Retreat Center for $300 or camp in the Guild's outdoor space for $225. People can also swim in a pond, wander trails, stargaze, rest in a hammock, or attend a morning yoga session. After class, people can gather around a fire for music, storytelling, games, and more. The Folk Art Guild is at 1445 Upper Hill Road, Middlesex, Yates County. For information on the Guild and other events and programs, go to www.folkartguild.org. Dusty Discovery sheds light on New York's first Black winery owner. Tracy Shoemaker, Rochester, Democrat, and Chronicle. When Will King was hired as director of the Finger Lakes Wine Museum 5 years ago, he took on the daunting and dusty task of conducting a complete inventory of its collection. The first museum in the country devoted to wine was founded in 1967 by Grayton and Walter Taylor on the grounds of Bully Hill Vineyards, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. It displays winemaking equipment from the early days of the Finger Lakes wine industry, local memorabilia, artwork by Walter Taylor, founder of Bully Hill, and more. But the museum has much more that's not on display, including hundreds of bottles of wine. While taking inventory of the bottles, King discovered an interesting half case. The label was from Fetterman Wine Company and claimed to be the first Black winery in the United States. I was completely unaware of the Fetterman story, King said, and he started asking around for information. He found that Raymond Ray Fetterman was remembered fondly, especially for Irene's, the restaurant he and his wife owned in Prattsburgh. Online research revealed that Fetterman was not the first Black-owned winery in the country. Likely unbeknownst to Fetterman, John June Lewis Sr. established Woburn Winery in Clarksville, Virginia in 1940, while Fetterman Wine Company was launched in 1973. But Raymond Fetterman was likely the second Black winery owner in the United States, and the first in New York. King assumed that Fetterman gave a case of wine to Walter Taylor, who was his friend. Half of the bottles may have been consumed, and the rest eventually found their way into the museum's collection. King was convinced that the bottles were historically important, but they were blemished and dirty. I didn't feel comfortable putting them on display, he said. That began a years-long process of finding a way to preserve the bottles and display them appropriately. He's kind of been forgotten, said Greg Learned, vice president and winemaker for Bully Hill. He was a pioneer. The story of Ray Fetterman. According to King's research and newspaper stories of the time, Fetterman arrived in the Finger Lakes from Virginia in the 1940s to pick potatoes during a harvest at the Muck, a large expanse of dark, fertile soil in Potter, Yates County. There, he was asked to bring men up from Virginia to work the farm and also serve as a foreman. He relocated to Prattsburg in 1952. At that time, he managed 200 acres of the farm and ultimately acquired 40 acres of his own. He would eventually open a grocery store, laundromat, janitorial service, car wash, and the restaurant. Fetterman joined the Rotary Club where he met Walter Taylor and his father, Grayton Taylor. Fetterman and Walter Taylor became friends and discussed the idea of making a wine that would appeal to Black consumers. Fetterman observed the wine operations at Bully Hill Vineyards and also took advice from Richard Vine of the Great Western Winery. Walter Taylor advocated for Fetterman's license with governmental agencies and offered to store wine at Bully Hill. Fetterman secured a $350,000 Small Business Association loan through Central Trust Bank in Rochester. He bought vineyards and built a bottling facility near Prattsburg. In 1973, Fetterman produced 2 wines, Irene Red, named after Irene Fetterman, and Rosalind White, named after the wife of plant manager Charles Young, who was also Black. The wines were picked up by distributors in Syracuse, Buffalo, Alexandria, Virginia, and Baltimore, Maryland, but they didn't sell by the leaps and bounds as hoped, according to Connie Winkler, story in the Elmira Star-Gazette. "We're so new, we're not even born yet," was how Young described the situation. "We're going through the labor pains of the birth of a business. The only thing that's unique is that it's a Black winery." Young had taken a year's leave of absence from his job as a senior technician at Corning Glass Works to help launch the winery. He returned to Corning but vowed to remain on in an advisory role. The winery, which sat on 14 acres, had 6 employees. Fetterman had also purchased 20 more acres of land. A new fruit wine made with watermelons and peaches was offered to stores for sampling. But 1973 would be Fetterman Wine Company's only vintage. At some point, the funds promised by the Small Business Association didn't materialize, and the winery was in foreclosure. The operation was sold piece by piece on June 2, 1974, in an auction that took 80 minutes. Among the people in attendance were 42 potential bidders, a few curious spectators, and Fetterman himself. "They put me out of business," he told Dick Eisenhart, a reporter from the Star-Gazette at the auction. "They put me out of business because I am Black. I thought we had overcome the deal of picking on a person 'cause of the color of his skin. I was really selling," he said. "If they hadn't shut off the funds, we would have been all right. If I had stolen the money or wasted the money, it would have been different, but it was just that I needed the money to operate." In 1976, newspapers reported a curious postscriptum to the story. J. Harold McConnell, 47, of Prattsburg, was indicted by a federal grand jury accused of making a false notation in the bank records of Central Trust Company's Prattsburg branch while he was a bank manager there. He quit the bank in December 1972. He was accused of indicating that Raymond Fetterman owed the bank $2,850, but Fetterman never owed the bank that amount, according to the indictment. But there was no further coverage of the outcome of the case. Fetterman vowed to reopen the winery, but that didn't happen. He died in 1984 at the age of 68. 50 years later, what might have been? 5 Fetterman Wine Company bottles and 2 labels were unveiled at the Finger Lakes Wine Museum on June 19, 2026, which coincided with the Juneteenth holiday. 3 of the bottles will be kept on permanent display at the museum, and the others will be stored as backup. Priscilla Brendler, executive director of the Greater Hudson Heritage Network, described the convoluted process that was used to get funding to restore the bottles through the Save America's Treasures Grant Program. King shared what he knew of Fetterman's story. Conservator Kate Tyler described the delicate processes she used to clean the bottles and restore the capsule on one of the bottles. After the presentation, some audience members pointed out that Fetterman's timing was unfortunate. In 1976, just 2 years after the foreclosure, Governor Hugh Carey signed the Farm Winery Act, which allowed New York wineries to sell their own wines and drastically lowered licensing fees. The legislation spurred a burgeoning wine industry. In 1976, just 19 wineries existed in New York. Today there are hundreds. The New York Wine and Grape Foundation counted 513 licensed wineries in 2024. Had Fetterman launched his winery just a few years earlier, the outcome may have been different. But some 50 years after the Farm Winery Act, Black-owned wineries in New York State are still few and far between. New York's most noted Black-owned winery is Gotham Winery, headquartered in Manhattan. Owned by Kawau Amos, who is also an investment banker, the winery has a production facility in Branchport near Keuka Lake and sources its grapes from New York, California, and other states. It's been widely estimated that less than 1% of U.S. wineries is Black-owned, while Black people represent more than 10% of American wine consumers. A 2020 study of Black wine entrepreneurs by Dr. Monique Bell of the Craig School of Business at California State University, Fresno, found that 43% of the survey participants, which represented wineries and other wine businesses, said that financial capital was the primary roadblock to their businesses. If you go, the Finger Lakes Wine Museum is at Bully Hill Vineyards, 8843 Grayton H. Taylor Memorial Drive in Hammondsport. It is open seasonally. Its summer hours are 10 to 5 p.m. Monday through Saturday and 10 to 4 p.m. on Sunday. Parking and admission are free. 315-403-3628 bullyhillvineyards.com. Food and drink reporter Tracy Shoemaker has a Level 3 wine certification with merit from the Wine and Spirits Education Trust and enjoys visiting the Finger Lakes as much as she can. Send Finger Lakes wine story tips to tracys@gannett.com. Who we are. Visit upstate New York where every place is list-worthy. Remarkable Rochester, Jim Memmott, Rochester Democrat and Chronicle. I wrote last year about Geneseo, where I live, making a World Atlas list of 10 best places to live in upstate New York. We were, of course, proud to be on the website along with Cazenovia, Saranac Lake, and other livable places. However, upon further review, I realized that Geneseo may not be all that special. World Atlas would seem to be on a mission to label every village, every hamlet, every mountain town north of Manhattan. It's a tsunami of participation awards. Still, who doesn't like making a list? I've been working on the Remarkable Rochesterians list since 2010. It keeps me out of trouble. Though I have a little quarrel with the World Atlas list of 7 most underrated small towns in upstate New York. For several reasons, announcers referred to Buffalo Bills linebacker Matt Milano as underrated. Eventually, they realized that being labeled underrated 1,000 times cancels out the label. Milano was too well known and too good to be underrated. Go Bills. That may be the case with the World Atlas 7. Cooperstown is on the list, but it has the Baseball Hall of Fame, the Fenimore Farm and Country Village, the former Farmers Museum, and the Glimmer Glass Opera Festival. Visitors give it rave reviews. Ditto for Ithaca, home of Cornell University and Ithaca College, another member of the underrated 7. Ithaca has gorges, it has a lake, it has granola. My friend Dan Strang, who likes to remind me he went to Cornell, swears by the place. I was happy to see Ellicottville on the underrated list, mostly because I grew up in Little Valley, just over a couple of hills from Ellicottville, which turned itself into a ski resort as soon as I went off to college and other places. Ellicottville seems crowded year-round now. It's doing very well for an underrated place. To its credit, Ellicottville is also on the 7 most welcoming towns list. It's an overachiever. Certainly, Lake Placid, home of the 1980 Winter Olympic Games, is not really underrated, but there is on the list, which also includes Kingston, New Paltz, and Aurora. We need another list, a list of places we forgot to list. But maybe I'm missing the larger point. Maybe I'm looking at the trees and not the forest. Perhaps it's upstate New York in its entirety that's underrated. It's also welcoming, secluded, fun to visit, memorable, and underrated too. Take that Manhattan wherever you are. Remarkable Rochesterian. Certainly no one makes a stronger case for upstate New York with pictures and his words than John Cucko, as shown by the outpouring of support he has received as he undergoes cancer treatment. John is a community treasure. Let's put his name on our list of remarkable Rochesterians. John Cucko, born 1964. He may have done more than anyone in history to photograph the beauty of Western New York and the Finger Lakes. A native of Binghamton and a graduate of SUNY Oswego, he started his sportscasting career in 1987 at WENY-TV in Elmira, followed by WICZ-TV in Binghamton, and later worked weekends at WHAM-TV, Channel 13 in Rochester. He became sports director for WROC-TV, Channel 8 in Rochester in 1991 and worked there for 32 years, covering the Buffalo Bills, many Super Bowls, and other events, and receiving numerous awards. In 2024, he began to work full-time for his company, John Cucko Digital, rising early in the morning to capture scenes that have enthralled his thousands of Facebook followers. From his home in Geneseo, Livingston County, retired senior editor Jim Memmott writes Remarkable Rochester about who we were, who we are. He can be reached at jmemmott@gannett.com or write Box 274, Geneseo, New York 14454. Obituaries. I'm not able to read the whole listing for each individual, just their name, age, and city or town. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Natalie J. Alpudakis, 87, Scottsville. Nina Andalina, Rochester. Mary M. Andrews, Pittsford. Stephen J. Ange, Sr., 68, Webster. Jeffrey Scott Bingham, 54, Rochester. Richard Boss, 87, Rochester. Alice G. Campbell, 91, Greece. A. Joan Conway, Rochester. James Dominic, 79, Churchville. Dennis P. DeRizio, 70, Rochester. Gerard Eberhardt, 84, Hemlock. Loretta A. Fideli, Greece. Daniel Murray Geringer, 52, Littleton, California, formerly of Pittsburgh. John G. Gilmore, 76, Rochester. Kimberly S. Green, Pittsford. Adelheid Audie Hess, 92, Brockport. Joanne M. Hoffman, Irondequoit. Phyllis Rudman Hoy, 93, Brockport. James E. Hutton, 94, Walworth. Diane Johansson, 90, Golden, Colorado. John A. J.J. Joseph. Susan Kitty Kerwin, 70, Greece. Lucille Kuntz, 75, Webster. Dennis W. Lisner, 74, Groveland. James M. Minjano, Jr., 78, Rochester. Karen E. Ensign Marsden, 80, Webster. Robert Maslin, 77, Greenfield, Massachusetts. Frederick W. Metzger, 96, Rochester. David A. Moreland, 83, Irondequoit. Gary Robert Morrow, Ph.D., Pittsford. Paul Allen Mortimer, Fairport. Thomas D. Narcissian, Parrington. Suzanne Nolan Green, 81 Brockport. Mary Ellen Orvis, 65 Rochester. Pamela Pam Jean Palmer, 78 Lima. Sheila Catherine Place Brown, 87 Rochester. Elizabeth Rawl Dearest, 84 Rochester. Carol Ann Robluski Raymond, Rochester. Edsel P. Ristow, Fairport. Frances Jean Robinson, 71 East Rochester. Eileen M. Schaefer, 75. Stephen M. Schaefer, 78. Mary Louise Seliver, 95 Rochester. Mary Lee McCombs Siplin, 88 Rochester. Claude Smoyer, 91 Webster. Eugene C. Stafford, D. Ed, Caledonia. Paul D. Suss, Rochester. Willie Tim, 96 Irondequoit. Robbie E. Kelly Van Buren. Dennis A. Veal, Rochester. Marie V. Zingarella, 91 Spencerport. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Sunday, July 12th issue of the Democrat and Chronicle. Your reader has been Amy. Thank you for listening.